Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen these important articles for a comprehensive analysis. There are few articles which require a detailed coverage as they are important both for your prelims and mains. And we have few small articles that are relevant only for the prelims exam. So let's cover all these topics in complete detail so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are benefiting from our initiatives, do support us with your likes, your comments, and without fail subscribe to our channel. Because going forward, we will be launching several new initiatives right here on our YouTube channel. Just yesterday, we have launched a new series called National Interest. And the USP of this new series is that this would be a series of animated videos, crisp videos of 15 to 20 minutes, which will cover important geopolitical developments happening around the world. So the first episode is already live on our YouTube channel. I urge you to watch this episode, and the link for the session is also provided in the video description below. I have covered the topic of India-Russia relations as to why India always backs Russia and the special relationship that the two countries have shared historically. So it's a comprehensive coverage of India-Russia relations. Do watch this video and stay tuned to our YouTube channel as we will be coming up with such initiatives in the coming days. And also please note, in order to mark and celebrate Raksha Bandhan, Unacademy has launched a special offer for the upcoming batches. The Liberty batch is all set to begin from 21st August. This would be a comprehensive online program for 2025 aspirants. So you will not only get access to live classes by our top educators, but you'll also get access to prelims and mains test series, doubt resolution sessions, and one-on-one mentorship. This entire subscription is available at just $23,999 as part of the Raksha Bandhan offer. So if you're interested to enroll for the program, please click on the link provided in the description below. With this, let's start the analysis for today and look at this important column on page number 8 of the Delhi edition. This article is relevant for international relations and as well as for economy. The article is focused on India's power exports in the region. It's a very important topic and a very interesting topic as well, because India plays a key role in South Asia region to guarantee energy security to our neighboring countries as well, especially to our neighbors like Nepal, Bangladesh, and in the future even Sri Lanka and others. India is working on transnational power projects and interconnection of power grids so that we can export the surplus power from one South Asian country to another where there is a deficit of power. So to solve the energy problem, India is taking a leadership role in South Asia to supply electricity to some of the neighboring countries. And this is the focus of this article. So let's first understand what role exactly is India playing in the region in exporting power to the neighboring countries. See, India, even though we ourselves are energy deficient in some regards, we do play a role in ensuring energy security not just for ourselves but for the entire region as well. Because without power, there can't be economic growth, there can't be agricultural activities, industrial activities. And to drive your economy, the essential ingredient is power. So India has a diversified set of sources through which we generate power, be it thermal power plants, nuclear power plants, solar energy. We have a well diversified basket through which we are securing our energy security. And by using our expertise and the resources that we have, we are helping our neighboring countries as well, such as Nepal and Bangladesh, which often suffer from power deficiency. India plays a critical role in exporting power to these neighboring countries, and we have an ambitious plan to create a regional power grid. In fact, these four countries, the BBIN countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, they are part of a power trade arrangement which has been established through India's leadership. India has invested heavily in Bhutan's hydropower sector. I hope you know that Bhutan is a Himalayan state, and any Himalayan region will have tremendous hydropower potential because the Himalayan rivers are perennial, right? They are fed through the glaciers and the snow caps that melt. So they don't depend necessarily on monsoon rains. So perennial rivers are always more ideal for hydropower generation due to constant water supply which is maintained. And more importantly, the Himalayas has a very steep slope gradient. The Himalayas are young fold mountains, and the deep valleys and the steep slope which is present allows the rivers to flow at a considerable pace, which is essential for hydropower generation. So given that these perennial waters are fast flowing rivers, they are absolutely perfect or conducive for hydropower generation. And India has tapped this hydropower potential of Bhutan by investing in several hydropower projects in the country. Since 1960s, India has been the key investor in the hydropower sector of Bhutan. We have successfully executed several hydropower projects in the country. The Mangdechu hydropower plant and the other new proposed projects. It has helped Bhutan to generate surplus power. Today, Bhutan is not only meeting its own requirement thanks to Indian assistance, but it is in a position to export this surplus power by using the power grids that have been laid out by India. So through the power trading agreements that we have with our neighbors like Nepal and Bangladesh, India exports this surplus power to countries like Nepal and Bangladesh. We have bilateral agreements with them. Recently, we have even signed a tripartite agreement between Nepal and Bangladesh and India. And we are supplying the electricity from India as well. There are few power plants in our country from where power is directly exported to Nepal and Bangladesh. Nepal also has tremendous hydropower potential because obviously even Nepal is a Himalayan state just like Bhutan. But in Nepal, there have been several challenges for executing hydropower projects. There has been a lot of opposition at the ground level on social grounds, environmental grounds, because these mega projects can threaten the sensitive environment. So due to local opposition, Nepal has not been able to tap its entire hydropower potential. But of late it has been doing slightly well, and India also is trying to step up its hydropower investments. But compared to Bhutan, India hasn't seen much success in Nepal, but we are working with Nepal as well. We have a bilateral power trading agreement, and we are looking to ensure that these proposed projects become a success so that even Nepal can become self-sufficient. So today Nepal does have few hydro plants built by India, some are built by China. In fact, there is a competition between India and China in the hydropower sector of Nepal. So through these hydro projects, even Nepal has started supplying electricity to India, which India later redistributes to all the other countries in the South Asia region. This is the ambitious regional power grid that India is trying to establish. India is focused on creating a regional power grid for the South Asia region. Going forward, we would like to extend this power grid to other countries as well, including Sri Lanka. India and Sri Lanka are also working on certain power projects which involve transnational exchange of power. India has invested recently in a thermal power plant at Rampur on eastern coast of Sri Lanka near Trincomalee port. And India would like to integrate the power grids with Sri Lanka to transmit electricity and exchange power between these countries. This is part of our ambitious global initiative, which is One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative, through which we are trying to focus on clean renewable energy like solar energy and create a global power grid by connecting the South Asian grid with Southeast Asia, Africa, West Asia, and even with Europe. This is part of a larger plan, a very ambitious plan, where we transition towards cleaner energy and create this global power grid to provide for transnational exchange of power and electricity. So that is why the topic becomes very important, because India is playing a leadership role in creating these transnational power grids. Now look at this another article, a related article on page number 12, which talks about India-Nepal power relations. According to the article, India has approved Nepal's export of additional power or surplus power to the Indian power grid. Nepal has been able to generate around 251 megawatts of additional power through its hydropower plants, and it had sought India's permission to export this surplus power to the Indian grid. And the concerned authorities have granted the permission. India has allowed the export of Nepal's electricity generated through hydro projects into the Indian power grid. So there are a couple of articles related to this topic in today's newspaper. Now going back to the column on page number 8, let's focus on the main theme of this article. This article is focused on a new amendment which has been introduced to the power trading rules or the power export rules of India. I told you that we have bilateral agreements with Nepal and Bangladesh and with Bhutan as well, and we have a tripartite agreement with India, Nepal and Bangladesh. So to facilitate the exchange of power, we have certain rules that have been laid out, which provides for the export of power from India by using Indian power grids. Plus there are few power plants in India which have a transnational role. They are meant for exporting power to other countries. So these rules which govern the trade of power with our neighboring countries, it has been recently amended. Let's understand why the amendment has been done, what are its implications, and carry out a detailed discussion on this topic. See, Adani Power, which is a major player in the power sector, it has a power plant in Jharkhand at a place called Goda. It's a thermal power plant. This thermal power plant is exclusively meant for exporting all the electricity to our neighboring country Bangladesh. The power generated at this Adani power plant in Jharkhand is not domestically used. It is meant only for export. The entire electricity generated through this thermal plant is 100% exported to Bangladesh as part of an agreement that we have signed with Bangladesh. But now all of you know what has happened in Bangladesh. There is a major political risk which has emerged. The friendly government under Awami League, under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina that existed, it has been toppled and there is no certainty on the political future of Bangladesh. India is worried that we might see the re-emergence of hostile governments in Bangladesh which might threaten our political relationship and as well as our economic relationship. So companies like Adani Power, which has invested heavily in such projects, which depends on Bangladesh buying this electricity from India, they are worried, they are concerned that payments may not be done for the power exports from this power plant. So to secure Adani Power and to insulate the Indian company, the government of India has modified the power export rules, the power trade rules, which will allow Adani Power to divert this power to domestic usage in India if the payments are not done from Bangladesh. This is the change which has been done. Now let's say from Bangladesh, the concerned power distribution company which is importing this power from Jharkhand, if it does not make timely payments to Adani Power, then if there are substantial delays, then Adani Power can divert the energy generated, the electricity, for domestic consumption. This previously was not possible because according to the bilateral agreement with Bangladesh, the entire electricity generated at the Goda thermal plant was meant only for Bangladesh. Adani Power could not sell that electricity in India. It was not allowed. Through this amendment, if there is a delay in payments from Bangladesh because of the crisis and the political uncertainty, in that case Adani Power will reserve the right to divert this power for domestic consumption, thus supporting the business interests of Adani Power. So this is the new change which has been introduced. And this decision of India has certain implications. So let's take a look at this. So from a prelims point of view, please make a note that the Goda thermal plant of Adani Power is India's first power plant meant exclusively for transnational export. Please make a note of this. This is the first transnational power project of India. This entire power plant, the entire electricity generated here is meant for 100% export to Bangladesh. This is the first such power plant set up by India to supply electricity to another country. So there is a power purchase agreement between Adani Power and the power distribution company in Bangladesh, which has been facilitated by the two governments. So previously, when we had a friendly government in Bangladesh and when there was political stability, this agreement was performing well, and Adani Power was exporting the entire electricity to Bangladesh, and payments were also being done usually on time. But now there is uncertainty that with the change in government, whether payments will happen on time or not. And without timely payments, a private company like Adani Power could take a business hit. And to protect the company and to protect Indian interests, this amendment has been done. A change has been introduced into the power trading rules, which will allow Adani Power to divert the power supply and use this electricity for domestic consumption within India. But however, this project has a lot of controversy surrounding it. Because see, Adani Power was importing the coal from a faraway mine in Australia. Adani is a very diversified business, right? Adani is investing in the coal sector as well. And Adani owns a very controversial coal mining project called the Carmichael coal mine in Australia. Australia is a major supplier of coal to India. And I hope you know that most of India's electricity is still coming from thermal plants. A large percentage of India's electricity even today comes from thermal power plants. Around 55% of the total electricity produced in India is still coming from thermal power, which means we are heavily dependent on coal. Unfortunately, our domestic coal supply is not able to match the demand. The demand for coal is not being met by domestic supplies. Why? Because there is inefficiency in the coal sector, which is monopolized by Coal India Limited, by a public sector unit. And also the quality of coal found in India is not very ideal and very suitable for thermal power generation. The calorific value is a little lower, which makes it a little unsuitable as well economically when it comes to thermal power generation. So most thermal power plants in India, they depend on imported coal. So India's energy security is dependent on imports. So we not only rely on imports for crude oil and gas imports, but even for coal, which is critical for powering our thermal plants, for generating more than 50% of our electricity, even for that we are dependent on foreign imports. So key suppliers of coal to India include countries such as Indonesia and Australia. Indonesia, Australia and few others. They are the primary coal suppliers to India, which powers our thermal plants to match the demand that comes from the electricity sector. So Adani has a coal mine, the Carmichael coal mine in Australia, and from this faraway coal mine, the coal is being imported into India, into Jharkhand, and it is this Australian coal which is being used at the Godha thermal plant. Now Bangladesh already had a problem with this, because see, one, the problem is about environmental concern as well. When you depend on fossil fuels like coal, there is obviously the concern of emissions. In fact, environmental activists have always been critical of this particular project of Adani Power, because it was relying on coal and the coal was being procured from a very far off distance, which increases the carbon footprint of this project. At a time when the world is looking to shift away from fossil fuels, and that too at a time when India itself is trying to transition away from fossil fuels, we are continuing to rely on such dirty sources of energy, unclean sources of energy. That is one criticism, the environmental concern. Second is the cost, because when you are importing coal from such a faraway country and producing electricity through that and then exporting it to Bangladesh, obviously the cost of production and transportation will get added, and eventually the price paid by Bangladesh will be much higher. So Bangladesh already had a concern that the electricity that India is supplying through this Adani power project was very expensive, much more expensive than what Bangladesh would pay if it were to produce domestically on its own. So this concern was already there. Bangladesh had already complained that the cost of this electricity is very high, primarily because Adani is importing coal from its own mine in Australia, creating a closed loop for the company So it's a great business for Adani, but it hurts Bangladesh, which is the end consumer. Bangladesh will end up paying for the transportation cost and the overall export cost and the production cost, which increases the cost of electricity. Now, upon this, if there is a change in government, and if there is not, if we don't have a friendly government in Bangladesh, right? As of now, things have started off on a good note. India has reached out to Mohammad Yunus, the chief advisor of the interim government, and the interim government also has reciprocated in a very friendly manner towards India. But eventually, if elections are held and if there is a new government, let's say if BNP comes to power, Bangladesh Nationalist Party comes to power, and again it brings back the hostility with India, then we never know whether the previous agreements will hold and whether Bangladesh will continue to honor the payments on time. Because Bangladesh was already complaining that the cost of this electricity was higher, that too when we had a friendly government. Now, if there were to be a hostile government or any change in the government which is expected to happen, there might be questions raised about the higher cost of this electricity and Bangladesh might delay the payments. This could hurt the business interests of Adani Power, and that is why the power trading rules have been amended by the government of India. So this will allow Adani Power to divert this power for domestic consumption, thus protecting the business interests of the company and the interests of India as well. And also please understand that Bangladesh is heavily dependent on India for energy security. We not only supply electricity generated through thermal plants, we also supply oil and gas. We supply essential fossil fuels to Bangladesh. Last year, for example, India-Bangladesh, they established a friendship pipeline. India-Bangladesh friendship pipeline was inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi and former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. This transports high-speed diesel. It transports high-speed diesel from the Numaligarh refinery in Assam through the Siliguri corridor into the Parbatipur depot in Bangladesh. It's around 135 kilometers a pipeline which was built. Hardly 5 to 6 kilometers is in India and close to 130 kilometers is in Bangladesh. So this pipeline supplies high-speed diesel from the Numaligarh refinery in Assam to meet the requirement of high-speed diesel in the transportation sector of Bangladesh. So this provides a reliable supply, cheaper supply, and it brings down the cost of transportation for Bangladesh. So like this, India has been a key supporter of Bangladesh when it comes to its energy security and key energy supplies. We have been supplying oil and gas and now electricity as well. That is why this relationship is so important. So experts are worried about the implications of these changes which are happening. One is the political change in Bangladesh and second the policy change from India. Some experts say that these changes are necessary to protect the business interests of a company because Adani Power eventually is a private company. And there's nothing wrong if the company focuses on protecting its business interests. If Bangladesh doesn't make payments on time, the company can't suffer losses, right? And obviously, this is in India's interest to protect the business interests of Adani. But however, there are concerns that this could affect our relationship with Bangladesh, or it might reduce the dependency of Bangladesh on India, and eventually India will lose that leverage, right? Right now, we can influence Bangladesh because we have a certain degree of leverage on Bangladesh. That's mainly because Bangladesh has a dependency on India. But if that dependency doesn't exist in the coming future, then we may lose the leverage on Bangladesh and thus it might compromise our interests in Bangladesh. So this is what we need to make note of. And please take up a practice question based on this topic. Discuss India's role in exporting power through transnational projects to its South Asian neighbors. So you can start out by talking about India's leadership role in the region, how India is a leader in South Asia and how it is trying to guarantee energy security to its South Asian neighbors. Because this is what brings development and prosperity. That is the interest of India. We want our neighboring economies to grow and flourish so that there is political and economic stability which is beneficial for Indian interests. So that way you can set the context for your answer, and then in the body you can explain the arrangements that we have with our neighboring countries, the specific arrangements. You can talk about India, Bhutan, India, Nepal, India, Bangladesh. Explain the kind of projects, the power trading arrangements we have created with them. and point out specific projects like Adani Power Thermal Plant in Jharkhand, which is India's first transnational power plant meant for exclusively exporting electricity to Bangladesh. Then discuss the concerns. Talk about the concerns in Nepal, concerns in Bangladesh. Concern in Nepal is there is a delay in execution of hydropower projects, and also we don't enjoy very good relations with Nepal most of the times. Again, due to political instability, due to anti-India elements, there is a friction between India and Nepal. Even though we supply electricity to Nepal, Nepal also has started exporting electricity to India, as we discussed. Still, there is no certainty, no clarity. So, there are concerns how this relationship will develop and the concerns with regard to Bangladesh. The political changes, the amendment India has done to power trading rules, how it can affect the power trading relationship between India and Bangladesh. Discuss those concerns and then conclude your answer. In the conclusion, maybe you can talk about India's ambitious global plans to create a regional grid by bringing Sri Lanka and others to create a South Asian power grid, which can be further interconnected with other regional grids to create a larger global grid. You can connect this with One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative, where eventually we plan to transition to clean energy sources like solar energy and create this global power grid where we can exchange the electricity generated through clean sources. So these initiatives of India focused on power exchange, it has great opportunity, great potential, but the concerns, underlying concerns need to be addressed. So that could be your conclusion to this answer. Now let's look at another important article on page number 9. We have a column referring to the Banni grasslands of the Kachchh region in Gujarat. So this topic is very important with regard to environment and ecology, both for prelims and as well as for mains. The article is focused on a recent study which has been conducted by researchers regarding the sustainable development and conservation of this critical ecosystem in Gujarat. So let's understand what are the Banni grasslands, where is it located, what is its ecological significance, and then take a brief look at the recent study which was conducted by a team of researchers which has been brought out in this article. See, in the map here you can see the state of Gujarat and you can see the Kachchh region over here, the Kachchh Peninsula. It shares borders with the Sindh province of Pakistan over here, and I hope you know that along this international border or IB between India-Pakistan, where Gujarat meets with Sindh, at this region in Kachchh, you have wet marshy areas which we call as the Run of Kachchh. The Run of Kachchh is primarily a marshy wetland. This is where we also have a minor boundary dispute with Pakistan called the Sir Creek dispute. It's a minor unresolved boundary dispute present in the same region, in the Kachchh region between India and Pakistan. Now, Run of Kachchh, which you can see here in this map, which borders Pakistan, is a marshy wetland. Right next to it, to the south of Run of Kachchh, you have the Banni grasslands, which is bound by the other important agroclimatic zones that are present around the Kachchh Peninsula. See, if you are aware of the geography, the terrain, the topography of this region of Gujarat and even Rajasthan, there are certain wetlands like in the Run of Kachchh, but apart from that, you largely have arid, cold deserts, salt flats, etc. But there is one patch of grassland that thrives, which is the Banni grassland, which happens to be Asia's largest tropical grassland. Please make a note of this. The Banni grassland in Gujarat is Asia's largest tropical grassland. It stretches somewhere between 2,600 to 3,400 square kilometers. So this ecosystem is a very critical ecosystem. It is largely an arid grassland ecosystem. It's known for its arid climate, right? Because in this part of Gujarat and even the neighboring part of Rajasthan, you have arid and semi-arid conditions. The rainfall here is very less, the precipitation is very low, but you have these desert areas and marshy wetlands and salt flats which form a very important ecosystem. Now, this region is protected because of its rich biodiversity. Because see, don't assume that in deserts and in salt flats and in grasslands there is no rich biodiversity. Generally, this is a misconception that biodiversity is found only in thick forests and jungles. That's a very large misconception. In every ecosystem, there is a unique biodiversity which is found. And even here, even though it's an arid, semi-arid ecosystem, there is a unique species diversity which is found over here, which makes this region ecologically very significant. So, it is a protected area. In fact, it has been considered for the cheetah reintroduction program as one of the possible sites for reintroducing the cheetahs. It was one of the last habitats in India where the cheetah went extinct. And now that the Modi government has prioritized the reintroduction of cheetahs, the Wildlife Institute of India, which studied various habitats to recommend the sites for reintroduction, has suggested Banni grassland as one of the reintroduction sites for African cheetahs. So that clearly shows how important and critical this ecosystem is. Now, if you look at grasslands from a geography point of view and from an environment point of view, grasslands are home to several important species. If you look at the Banni grasslands, let me tell you the kind of unique biodiversity that you find here. There is a very unique and rich biodiversity found in Banni grasslands. You find many protected species like the nilgai, the chinkara, the black buck, and even predators like Asiatic wildcat, desert fox, which play a key role in the food chain as apex predators. And you also find the Indian wild ass, which at one point was severely threatened. So this habitat, which extends to the run of Kachchh, is a key habitat for several species of mammals, animals. Many of them are protected and threatened species. It's a key habitat for several birds, including migratory and resident birds. And the great Indian bustard, which is found in the neighboring habitat of Run of Kachchh and Rajasthan, has been spotted here as well. The great Indian bustard is facing a critical threat. It's critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. Hardly 150 to 180 individuals are left in the wild and they are on the brink of extinction. So in these arid areas of Rajasthan and Gujarat, great Indian bustard receives a lot of attention with regard to conservation efforts. So few great Indian bustard individuals have been spotted in Banni grasslands as well. They thrive in such arid tropical grasslands. Now coming to grassland ecosystem, grasslands in general, they provide a number of ecological services. It's one of the largest ecosystem in the world, by the way. You have different types of grasslands. You would have studied about the savannas or the shrublands and the open grasslands, right, from Africa to Central Asia to Europe. It constitutes one of the largest ecosystems in the world. These grasslands, they might be completely arid, or they might just have some grass and shrubs, or it might be a completely open, dry, deciduous type of grassland, or it could be a savanna type of ecosystem. Either ways, grasslands play a very important role in the environment. They offer a number of ecological services. Apart from being an important habitat for several species of animals and birds, it also plays a big role in carbon sequestration. It's a carbon sink. It acts as a natural carbon sink to sequester the excess carbon in the atmosphere. Thus, it plays a role in climate mitigation. It plays a big role in pollination, and it enables several other environmental activities and services. But however, these grasslands around the world, not just in India, not just the Banni grasslands, around the world, grassland ecosystems are under threat. Because compared to forests, compared to hilly mountainous areas, grasslands are easy to clear for human activities. To facilitate and pave the way for agriculture, for industrialization, urbanization, it's easier to clear the grasslands because it's a plain area and you don't have strong or rich vegetation. You can easily remove the grass and shrub, thus quickly expanding human habitation and human activities which has become detrimental to the health and the survival of grassland ecosystems. So rapid urbanization, agricultural activities, industrial activities, it has led to degradation of grasslands around the world, and according to a study, 49% of grassland ecosystems around the world are going through land degradation. This is a direct result of anthropogenic activities. Man-made factors are directly responsible for the destruction of the ecosystem itself. Now, we can't afford this in a country like India, especially in Banni grassland, because it is Asia's largest tropical grassland. If you look at the total land area of India, 24% of this land area is covered with grasslands. According to a study by Forest Survey of India, nearly 8 lakh square kilometers, or roughly around 24% of our land area, is covered with grasslands, and Banni grassland is the largest amongst all of them. Right now, they are all threatened, and the species present here, or they are also threatened by anthropogenic activities. So the rampant expansion of agriculture, human habitations, industrialization, urbanization, and even the entry of invasive alien species into the ecosystem has disrupted the native food chain, and it is pushing several species to the brink of extinction, and it has led to degradation of the entire ecosystem. The large projects which are planned over here, infrastructure projects, they are a major threat to the sensitive ecosystem. And the other concern is that if you look at any government program or programs of NGOs, when it comes to conservation, there is always a bias to focus on conservation of forest land. When it comes to, let's say, Western Ghats, or the forests in Northeast India, or the forests at the foothills of Himalayas, they always get more attention because governments and conservation agencies and environmental groups, they generally tend to have a bias towards forest conservation, which means arid grasslands, they get neglected as if those ecosystems don't matter. That's why I told you, never have a misconception that grasslands are useless or they don't have rich biodiversity. They have a unique biodiversity, and that's what matters. And given the aridity and given the risk factors, they face a bigger risk compared to your forests. But in conservation programs, if you look at the government conservation programs, they clearly have a bias towards forest conservation, thereby neglecting grassland conservation. We do have separate programs for wetland conservation, for example, right? We have a separate initiative for wetland conservation in India, but for grassland conservation, there is no special attention paid to it. So that is why the writers of the column, they are urging the government, the concerned authorities, and even the civil society to pay adequate attention to conserve and protect the grasslands as well, particularly the Banni grassland in Kachchh. So in this study, the researchers, they classified the grassland ecosystem into different categories, and based on the study, they have recommended a sustainable model through which the grassland ecosystem can be restored. Now, we don't have to go into the details of the study. That's not necessary. It's not required for us. So just know that it was a scientific assessment to figure out how a conservation model can be designed so that in a sustainable manner, the Banni grassland ecosystem can be protected and we can ensure that the biodiversity here is conserved. So they have suggested few recommendations. They have classified the grassland ecosystem into 5 different categories. They have recommended ideas like bringing adequate water, because water scarcity has started affecting the region, which is already a arid to semi-arid region. So through irrigation and rainwater harvesting, the required water demand can be met. They are suggesting even the use of fertilizers and other proactive interventions like terracing, which can help in arresting the flow of water and protect the land and the soil from further degradation and desertification. So they are talking about increasing the primary productivity of the grassland ecosystem by promoting the growth of grass and shrubs, which can hold on to the top layer of the soil, thus protecting soil fertility. That can prevent erosion, it can check the leaching of nutrients, and thus it can revive the entire ecosystem. So such measures and active intervention has been suggested, and this plan can be very helpful for the concerned authorities to plan for a sustainable development and conservation of the Banni grassland ecosystem. So institutions like National Green Tribunal and policy makers at Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, the State Forest Department, they can rely on such research and plans to come out with an informed policy, to make laws and regulations and to come out with conservation plans and programs. Such scientific studies can be very helpful, and that is the importance of this research which has been carried out by a team of Indian researchers. Is that clear? So you can expect direct prelims questions on Banni grassland ecosystem and maybe a mains question as well. So this question is asking you to discuss the ecological role of Banni grasslands and the need for its conservation. It's a very straightforward question. Use the points that we have discussed and structure this into a good answer, and let's see how many of you can write an answer to this question, and please post that in the comment section below. Now coming to the fourth article, on page 11, we have a couple of articles related to a very controversial topic, the lateral entry to civil services. In fact, from the last few days, we have been getting a lot of articles related to this. I was waiting for further developments and further clarity on the topic so that we can discuss this topic in slight detail. Because this is a topic, this is an issue which is going to affect all of you, all the civil services aspirants. So let's discuss this topic in slight detail. Recently, the UPSC brought out a notification just a few days ago. You might have seen this as well. So UPSC released a notification on its website calling for lateral entry into civil services, and it has announced a record number of vacancies. 45 vacancies have been announced, and this recruitment drive is looking for senior level officers from the level of joint secretary to director to deputy secretaries. Now let's understand what is lateral entry. How does this affect you? How does it affect the civil services examination? And what's the controversy surrounding it? What is the criticism that has come up? See, when it comes to civil services, be it the All India service like IAS, IPS, or be it the central civil services, all the services are clubbed together with regard to recruitment under one single examination, which is your civil services examination, the exam that all of you are preparing for. So UPSC conducts the civil services examination to recruit for these civil services, right? More than 20 civil services. Now this process of recruitment is largely fair and transparent. Apart from the recent allegations and controversies, in general, UPSC has retained its credibility. Apart from the recent incidents and few instances here and there, by and large, UPSC has retained its credibility as a professional organization which has been able to conduct efficient exams, transparent and fair exams, giving a level playing field for aspirants from across the length and breadth of the country. So aspirants of every background attempt this exam, the rich, the poor, from every region, from every caste, from every religion, from every community, thereby creating a level playing field. This also ensures that there is inclusive representation within the government, within the bureaucracy. So this examination follows a fair, transparent process, and more importantly, the quota system is implemented. The policy of reservation, right, which is very essential. It's a constitutional mandate to ensure that backward classes, socially, educationally backward classes like scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and OBCs, other backward classes, and economically weaker sections, they are adequately represented through this examination process because the quota system is implemented within the civil services exam. So let's say, for example, there are 150 vacancies for IAS. Accordingly, the seats are reserved for different categories, for SCs, for STs, OBCs, EWS category, then of course physically disabled and the others. So this provides for a fair level playing field. It's a common exam for everyone, right? Of course, it is debatable whether this is the perfect format of exam, but by and large, this is seen as a model which fits the Indian context, right? You can debate whether the examination format is correct, whether the subjects are ideal or not, whether an optional is needed or not. But by and large, one can agree that it's a fair and transparent system, creating a common entry, a level playing field for everyone. But, however, the government sometimes needs specialists, experts from the outside as well. Because those who are recruited from the civil services exam, they are largely generalists. It's a concept in public administration. Now, let's say you guys clear this exam. I really hope all of you do. When you become an IAS, IPS or an IFS, eventually you will be in a generalist role, especially in the IAS, right? At a certain point in your career, you are a district collector, right? Managing the district administration. Then suddenly you will be transferred to a state department. You are then taken on central deputation to a central ministry. So your postings keep changing from one sector to another, one department to another. So throughout a career, an IAS officer would have worked across multiple domains, making them a generalist, not a specialist, right? So generalists bring something to the table. They have the flexibility, right, to work in any sector. They can bring experience from other domains and try to use that in administration in other areas. But generalists can't play the role of a specialist. Now, when it comes to economic policy, for example, or environmental policies, or industrial policies, or policies related to intellectual property, or the advances happening in technology, there you would need specialists to come in. And sometimes within the civil services, within the bureaucracy, there might be a lack of these specialists. So that is why there has been a recommendation from many years to bring in experts from the outside into the civil services by creating a lateral entry system. This was recommended for the first time by the second ARC, the Second Administrative Reforms Commission, which was headed by Veerappa Moily, the then Congress leader, former Chief Minister of Karnataka and also a Union Cabinet Minister under the UPA government. Under his chairmanship, the second ARC had been set up to suggest administrative reforms. And in fact, second ARC reports are very crucial for your exams as well, especially for those who have public administration as their optional, right? Even for GS, ARC reports are quite helpful. So second ARC had recommended the introduction of lateral entry. There have been other committees as well in the past which have supported lateral entry, maybe the entry of few specialists from the private sector, from outside of the government, who can be brought in for few years so that they can bring in the required expertise, their knowledge, their skills, and thus serve the government to improve its administration, and then maybe they can step out. So this was mainly meant for professionals who are already in the middle of their career. Because civil services exam, it is trying to catch the aspirants young, right? Usually CSE aspirants, they are having no work experience. Even if they have some work experience, it will be just few years of work experience. So this is an entry level opportunity for you through civil services exam. But lateral entry talks about mid to higher level entry, where professionals who are already having 10, 15 years of expertise with a very reputed educational background, they would have done their masters, their doctorates. So such candidates are sought out through lateral entry scheme. And this is nothing new, it's not new to India. There are other countries which follow such lateral entry system of recruitment as well. So recommendation of second ARC was that along with directly recruiting civil servants through the civil services exam, we need certain specialists at the mid to higher level of the bureaucracy. We can bring them from outside of the government, mainly from the private sector, and create a system for that, a transparent and fair system for that. This was considered by the UPA government, but later the proposal was dropped due to the lack of support. But now the Modi government is bringing this back. Lateral recruitment had been done in the last few years as well, but the number of vacancies were very less. But this time the controversy has become much bigger because of the larger number of vacancies. 45 vacancies, it is quite significant. Given that in civil services exam, the total vacancies is usually around 900 to 1000. Out of that, the top elite services will have hardly 300 to 350 vacancies. So out of that, if 45 vacancies are getting filled through lateral entry at senior levels, this might have a huge impact on the civil services, the very process of recruitment, the concept of reservation. Because the biggest criticism right now, which has come from the opposition, is that the Modi government has not provided for reservation under this lateral entry recruitment, which has been notified by UPSC. So if you're interested, please download the notification, just go through that. You will see that the recruitment is being done for senior levels like joint secretary and mid levels like director and deputy secretary level. Okay. The qualification is accordingly as well. You need 10-15 years of work experience in the domain. You need a solid educational background as well. For certain roles, it's mandatory to have a post graduation or a doctorate. For certain roles, just a graduation is sufficient. But the domains, the fields are very clearly specified. For some roles, you have to be a BTech graduate, like that. Now, in this lateral entry scheme, there won't be any written examination. They won't have to go through the struggle of preparing for prelims and mains. They will just be shortlisted on the basis of their resume, their work portfolio. Because these are professionals who come with a solid experience of 10-15 years in the industry, right? They are already leaders in the industry. So they need not go through any written exam. But based on their work profile, their portfolio, their experience, their contribution, resumes will be shortlisted by UPSC, and those who are shortlisted will be called for an interview. Based on this interview, final recommendation will be done and they will be recruited into the government through the lateral entry scheme. Now the concern here is that there are two concerns. One, how does this undercut the direct recruitment which is done under civil services exam? That is point number one. Second, why the government has not included reservation under lateral entry? Because when 45 specialists are being brought in, don't you think social justice has to be done? Because tomorrow if this were to become the norm, or down the line, if the government is looking to bring more lateral entrants, let's say we might be looking at a future, hypothetically, where a few hundred top officers are brought in directly, laterally from the private sector, and only few hundred are recruited from the civil services exam. Then in that case, there needs to be reservation, there needs to be a quota system for lateral entry as well. Or else how will you do social justice? How will you ensure there is inclusive representation for all the communities in the civil services? Now even with reservation, data shows that the upper castes have a dominant position within the civil services, within the bureaucracy. SCs, STs and other backward communities, they have a lower representation despite having the policy of reservation. That is a established fact. And as you move up the hierarchy within the bureaucracy, you will find that officials from upper castes are more compared to those from the lower caste, from Dalits, etc. This already is a major concern. So now if the government is looking to bring in so many specialists as lateral entrants, and if there is no reservation included here, then this could perpetuate the inequality in the society, leading to complete change within the steel frame of India, the bureaucracy of India. So these concerns have been raised by the opposition. Critics have pointed out that one, the interview process alone may not be enough. There is no guarantee that interview process will be entirely transparent. There needs to be a better way of recruitment, which was recommended by second ARC, a clean, fair and transparent mechanism to recruit laterally. See, there is a solid argument for lateral entry. I am not against it. Lateral entry serves a good purpose. It helps in bringing the specialists. It gives an opportunity for industry leaders to contribute in governance. That's really good for the country. But it can't come at the cost of civil services aspirants who are directly recruited. And it can't compromise the spirit of reservation, the spirit of affirmative action. These are the two issues which the government needs to address, the UPSC needs to address. This is what we take away from these two articles. Now coming to the prelim section, very quick updates. On page number 10, there's a very interesting article. There has been an intrusion from China again into eastern Ladakh. This time it's not Chinese soldiers who have stepped into Indian territory, but Chinese Yaks have crossed over into eastern Ladakh. At the Demchok region, which is a disputed site, we have a standing dispute going on here ever since the Ladakh crisis began in 2020. Since then, a military standoff has been going on at Demchok and it remains an unresolved dispute, and the standoff has continued over here. See, after the Ladakh crisis began, at few locations, the standoff was resolved through talks between military commanders. At places like Panongso Lake, Galwan River Valley, Hot Springs area. At these areas where flashpoints had developed, where clashes had broken out, tensions had increased between Indian Army and the PLA. Through talks and negotiations, we scaled down the tensions, we de-escalated and disengaged, and we withdrew the troops as well. And at these places, the dispute has been settled as of now. Right? The latest standoff at least has been settled temporarily and status quo has been restored. But there are two places where the standoff continues, and one is Demchok. The other is Depsang Plain. At Depsang Plain and Demchok, the standoff continues and boundary talks are going on between senior military commanders to try and resolve this standoff. So at the Demchok region, which is a sensitive region, Chinese Yaks have crossed over into India, which have been captured by Indian nomads. See, in this part of Ladakh and on the other side in Tibet, there are many nomadic tribal communities. These are nomadic groups which live and reside in the Himalayas, in the high altitude region. They rear these animals which are suited to the Himalayan climate, like yaks and others, and they rely on them for their livelihood. They extract the milk from yak, the hair as well. There are other cattle cultivated as well, from sheep to goats to a few other animals. This is part of the traditional livelihood of the nomadic grazing communities found in Ladakh and as well as in Tibet. You find similar nomadic communities in Kashmir, in Nepal, in Sikkim as well, all the way till Bhutan and Arunachal Pradesh. But every now and then, these nomadic grazing communities, they tend to cross over into each other's territory. There have been instances where China has blocked the entry of Indian nomadic grazing community, thus affecting their livelihood. In Indian grazing lands, right, in Indian territory, which is illegally claimed by China, Chinese troops have blocked the Indian grazers from carrying their yaks and cattle, and this has affected the livelihood and the sustenance of these communities. India has raised this issue as well. Similarly, sometimes Chinese nomadic grazers and their animals cross over to the Indian side, and they are often captured by the Indian nomadic grazers as a retribution, as a retaliation. So this is a persistent issue which affects the border villages, especially near Chardingla, where India-China have set up camps in the ongoing border standoff, right? There are tense moments present over here. There are a lot of tensions prevailing here because of the standing issue, and the crossover of the animals and even the grazing community, the nomads, can turn into a diplomatic issue as well. So please note that yaks play a critical role in the life of the nomadic communities in the Himalayas. Is that clear? The milk of the yaks, the wool which is extracted, the hair, right? It is what helps in sustaining these communities. Next, on page 12, we have an article referring to the National Mission for Clean Ganga. The mission head has pointed out the slow implementation of the projects under National Mission for Clean Ganga. So let's quickly understand what is National Mission for Clean Ganga. The Modi government launched an ambitious program in 2014 called Namami Gange Initiative. I am sure all of you would have heard of the Namami Gange program or the Namami Gange Initiative. It's an initiative to tackle pollution in the Ganga river and its tributaries, and also to conserve the Ganga river and the ecosystem present around it, to restore the ambience and the amenities on the river banks, so that even recreational activities like tourism can be promoted, and to spread awareness amongst the public with regard to conservation of the lifeline of North India, which is the Ganga river. Right? Across the Indo-Gangetic plain, Ganga and its tributaries, they are the lifeline of the people for agriculture, for industries, for drinking water, and even for navigation. And the challenge here was that the Ganga and its tributaries were extremely polluted as they passed through one of the most populated or densely populated regions in the world. They passed through various towns and industrial centers and cities where urban sewage and waste and industrial effluents are directly released into the river, leading to severe pollution. It had choked the Ganga river, raising a concern about the aquatic species, their survival, and the very health of the ecosystem. So On an urgent basis, the government launched the Namami Gange initiative to abate the pollution, to curb the direct release of urban sewage and industrial effluents, and to clean the water, to conserve the entire drainage basin, and to restore the ecosystem, and to restore the amenities on the river banks, to beautify the river banks, to rebuild the river banks which have been eroded, so that the ambience can be created, amenities can be built around which a local economy can be created, especially a tourism based economy. So this requires community participation as well, from the local community, from the state government, local authorities. So the central government launched this umbrella program called Namami Gange, which is implemented by National Mission for Clean Ganga. The National Mission for Clean Ganga is the executive arm of this program. It has been set up as a society. It is registered under the Society Act, and it coordinates with the concerned state governments, works with the local authorities and the people to tackle pollution and to conserve the Ganga river. And according to the mission head of National Mission for Clean Ganga, the project is going very slow. Even though funds have been released for tackling pollution, for curbing the release of sewage and effluents, and for conserving the Ganga, the funds are not being spent adequately. Projects are not being taken up on time. There are substantial delays in implementation of these key projects. That is the concern which has been flagged by the mission head of National Mission for Clean Ganga. On this note, I would like to bring my discussion to an end, and you can join my Telegram channel as well by scanning the QR code. The link is also provided in the video description, and this is an opportunity where I can share some updates and current affairs notes with those who are part of the Telegram channel. I hope you guys have liked the session today. Do let me know what you think. If you understood everything, please press the like button and do comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.